I never believed a single night could tear a hole through the fabric of my life. Until it did. The sun had long dipped behind the ridge, the last golden sliver of daylight swallowed by pine-covered peaks. I tightened the saddle strap on Dusty, my restless quarter horse, and patted his neck gently as he drank from the trough. The stars had just begun their quiet unveiling across the velvet sky. A peaceful stillness settling over my mountainside ranch. That was, until I heard the scream. High, desperate, human. Help, please, someone, no. The voice tore through the night like a knife. My body went still, every muscle locked. Then I ran, boots pounding dry earth, fence posts flashing past in my peripheral vision, my flashlight barely keeping up as I sprinted toward the cliffs. It came again, clearer this time. From the south ridge, a scream followed by a ragged sob, branches cracking, and then I saw her, suspended over the edge of the cliff, clinging to a branch barely the width of my forearm, was a woman in white, a wedding dress, torn, bloodied, dirt-smeared and glowing ghost-like under the moon. Her hair tangled in the wind, face pale, wild with terror, her knuckles bone-white as she gripped the branch. Her feet dangled over the abyss. One slip, and she was gone. Please, she gasped. They tried to kill me. No hesitation, I dropped to the ground, anchoring my rope to an old cedar root, tying the other end around my waist. My fingers trembled, but my voice stayed calm. I've got you, I told her. I'm coming, she sobbed. The branch creaked, giving with every shake of her body. I'm Luke, I said as I descended. You can trust me. I'm Elena, she choked out. Elena Marquette. They think I'm dead. Elena Marquette. The name hit me like a thunderclap. She wasn't just some runaway bride. She was the heiress of Marquette Holdings, a multi-billion-dollar empire. The only daughter of Lucien Marquette, and fiancée of Adrian Vale. The most ruthless CEO in New York's elite finance circle. And someone had tried to kill her. Just as the branch gave a final sickening crack, she leapt. I caught her wrist, her weight nearly yanking me off the cliff. My boots slipped, pebbles crumbled beneath me, but I held on. Every nerve screamed, every muscle burned. Inch by inch, I pulled her up. Her breath was hot and sharp, her sobs shaking my bones. Above us, the rope groaned, and then, we were safe. Elena collapsed beside me, her dress shredded, her body trembling in the grass. Her voice came in broken gasps. They pushed me, she whispered. They watched me fall. I reached out, my hand firm on her shoulder. You're safe now. They didn't win, but I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. Behind her sobs was a storm brewing, and in the darkness beyond the trees, somewhere, someone still wanted her dead. The walk back to my cabin was slow. Elena could barely keep upright, her bare feet stumbling over roots and gravel. I offered my arm. At first, she hesitated, then took it, her grip tighter than I expected. We didn't speak, not yet. The night was thick with questions neither of us had words for. Inside, I handed her a blanket, watching her scan every shadow, every creak in the floorboards making her flinch. She wasn't just scared, she was hunted. I'll make tea, I said. She nodded, clutching the wool like it was armor. As the kettle boiled, I watched her out of the corner of my eye. A woman who had everything, or so the world thought, reduced to a bundle of raw nerves in my living room. But beneath the fear, I saw something else. Fury. Not the explosive kind, but the kind that simmers, waiting for its moment. She spoke first. They arranged the wedding, she said, eyes locked on the flames in the fireplace. My father, Adrian, a merger in the form of a marriage. I was the currency. You didn't want it. I begged them not to go through with it. Her voice cracked, but to them, I was a signature on a contract. The Marquette name was all that mattered. She reached into the folds of her ruined dress and pulled out a broken earring, diamond. Expensive, smeared with blood. This was supposed to be the beginning of everything. Instead, it almost became the end. Silence. I thought I escaped, she whispered. My driver helped me. I thought we were free. Then the SUV came. Blacked out windows. No plates. We ran. He didn't make it. A tear slipped down her cheek. But her voice stayed steady. They chased me through the forest like I was prey. My fists clenched. This was more than corporate drama. This was attempted murder. They won't stop, she said. Adrian doesn't lose. Ever. He'll come for me himself if he has to. I met her eyes. Then we'll make sure he doesn't win this time. She stared at me like she didn't believe it. But she wanted to. And that was enough. For now. Outside, the wind howled again. But inside that cabin, two strangers forged something silent and powerful. A promise of resistance. This was no longer about survival. This was the start of a war. The sun rose slow and golden over the tree line, washing the cabin in a glow that felt almost too gentle for what had happened the night before. Elena hadn't spoken much since I brought her inside, but I could feel the storm behind her eyes. Every twitch of her fingers, every sudden glance at the door, screamed one thing: she wasn't safe yet. Not in her body, not in her mind. I made eggs, coffee. She sat at the edge of the table, wrapped in a blanket, staring at her hands. How did you know where I was? She finally asked. Voice husky. I didn't, I said. I just ran toward the screaming. She gave a short, hollow laugh. It was the first sound that wasn't terror. They were supposed to scare me, she said after a pause. At least, that's what Adrian told the media. A misunderstanding. Overzealous security. You believe him? She looked up at me, a slow rage rising behind her eyes. They pushed me off a cliff. Luke. I nodded. That's not misunderstanding. That's attempted murder. She inhaled shakily, folding her hands tighter. He's the kind of man who's never heard the word no. When I ran, it wasn't about love or loyalty. It was about control. I was the face of $1 billion merger. My name, my signature, meant another 10 years of dominance for Marquette Holdings. And without you, they lose everything. Her voice shook with something deeper now. Not fear, guilt. My driver, he tried to protect me. His name was Thomas. He'd been with our family for years. I heard him yell my name when they caught up. I didn't look back. You survived, I said. You're here, that matters. I should have died. But you didn't. I leaned forward. And now you get to decide what happens next. Over the next few days, Elena began to move more. She helped me in the yard, raked leaves, brushed Dusty with careful, quiet hands. She still flinched at sudden sounds, still refused to sleep without her boots beside the bed. But her voice returned. She asked questions about the land, the animals, the solar system I'd rigged to run power. She seemed fascinated by the simplicity of it all. No cameras, no headlines, no shareholders breathing down your neck. She said one night, no expectations. I added. She gave a half smile. You don't know what it's like, being seen. But not for who you are. Just what you represent. Wealth, power, leverage. I met her gaze. You're not that here. What am I here? A woman trying to live. That's enough. The breakthrough came a week after the cliff. We were sitting by the wood stove, eating stew. She picked up a tattered book from the shelf, an old western I'd read a dozen times, and flipped through the pages. You don't have a TV? Too much noise, I said. She nodded. That's why I stayed up here, when I could have kept running. Something about this place, it feels like a pause. Like the world can't find me here. It can't, not unless you want it to. She looked down, then slowly held up the book. You mind if I read a little? Be my guest. And she did. Her voice was soft, deliberate, every syllable like it had weight. She read half a chapter before her eyes started to drift, the exhaustion finally winning. I watched her sleep on the warm couch, the firelight casting a gold halo around her. For the first time, her brow wasn't furrowed, her fists weren't clenched. She looked free. And I knew then, this wasn't just about hiding her. It was about helping her remember she was still alive. The next morning, she told me something I didn't expect. I want to fight back. The words came quietly, but the resolve behind them was hard as steel. I'm done hiding. Adrian thinks I'm weak, that I ran, but I didn't. I survived. She was pacing now, hair unbound and wild, but her hands steady. I know where the money flows. Offshore accounts. Shell corporations. He built half his empire on lies and silence. And I have access. Still, you can expose him. I can bring it all down. But it's dangerous. She met my eyes. So is silence. That night, I brought down an old satellite laptop I kept stored for emergencies, one I hadn't touched in years. She got to work immediately. Fingers flying over the keys. Databases, spreadsheets, hidden account numbers that only someone on the inside could know. For the next 48 hours, we barely slept. Elena transformed from a hunted woman into something else entirely, a strategist. A whistleblower, a force. We contacted Natalie Rhodes, the investigative journalist who had tried to uncover Marquette Holdings once before. She didn't hesitate. I knew you weren't dead, Natalie said on the encrypted video call. They tried to scrub everything. But I remembered you. I remembered your silence. Then let's give them something to remember for real. Elena replied. By the end of the week, they had compiled a digital dossier. Names, transactions, NDAs, threats, confidential memos, all of it. Natalie's voice was electric through the call. This will burn them. I looked over at Elena. She didn't smile, she just nodded. Good, because fire was exactly what she intended to bring. The plan was simple. On paper, Elena would bait Adrian with a single message, from a burner phone. Routed through enough VPNs to make it untraceable. She would say she regretted running. That she was scared. That she wanted to come home. He would believe her. That was the key. We knew the man, knew his ego. Adrian Vale didn't just want to win, he wanted to own. Elena had humiliated him. The only way he'd ever feel whole again was if she crawled back. Natalie set up the trap. An abandoned lodge in the mountains. Long since shuttered for fire damage. Secluded. No cameras. No one around to witness what was coming. Except us. Elena rehearsed her lines in the mirror. But they didn't sound like acting. They sounded like memories. I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. I miss you. Every word tasted like acid. But she said them with glassy eyes and trembling hands. Just like he'd expect. The illusion of fragility. She handed me the phone before the call. Just in case I freeze. You won't, I said. You never do. She held my gaze. If something goes wrong, you run. Don't try to save me again. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't going anywhere. Adrian arrived on schedule. Sharp suit, cold eyes, a watch more expensive than most cabins. He stepped from the black SUV like a king returning to a throne. He didn't see the hidden cameras. The drone above. The audio team in the woods. Elena, he purred. You look tired. I haven't slept, she said softly. Guilt does that, he said, stepping closer, running away, making me look like the villain. She didn't blink. Maybe you are. He laughed. You don't believe that. I believe you ordered men to chase me off a cliff. Adrian's jaw flexed. That was unfortunate, but necessary. You needed to understand your place. There it is, Natalie whispered in my earpiece. Keep him talking. Elena stepped back just slightly. You tried to kill me, Adrian. He leaned in, voice a venomous whisper, and yet here you are, still breathing, ungrateful as ever. I built a kingdom for you, Elena. You were supposed to rule beside me, not run like a frightened child. He thought he was in control, that the story was his again. Until the sirens blared. Police emerged from the tree line. Weapons raised. Adrian spun, furious. What is this? Justice, Elena said. Natalie stepped forward with a flash drive. We have it all. Confession, threats, financial records, offshore accounts, and that little speech just now. Broadcast live. Adrian Vale was silent as they cuffed him. Silent as they read his rights. Only when they dragged him past Elena did he finally speak. You think this ends with me? He hissed. She didn't flinch. No, but it starts with you. That night, we returned to the cabin. No reporters, no statements, just silence. Elena sat on the porch. A blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The stars burned bright above the trees. She stared at them like she was finally seeing the sky for the first time. You did it, I said. She shook her head. No, we did. Then, quietly, Thomas would have liked it here. I didn't say anything, just sat beside her, let the weight of what we'd done settle over us. Elena Marquette, daughter of Empire, had walked away from it all. And maybe, for the first time in her life, she was free. The aftermath rippled across the world like thunder. By morning, headlines screamed, Billionaire CEO Adrian Vail arrested for conspiracy and attempted murder. Social media ignited. Stock in Vail Enterprises crashed by 40% in a day. Photos of Elena leaked, some old, some new, sparking theories, support, and the ever-predictable doubt from skeptics who couldn't imagine a billionaire bride ever needing to run. Natalie's full report aired within 48 hours. It wasn't just about Elena. It was about Adrian's network. About manipulation, control, bribes, silenced employees, paper trails leading back years. And at the center, Elena's voice. Clear, unapologetic. I am not a victim. I am a survivor, and I will not be quiet anymore. Within a week, 5 other women came forward, assistants, ex-partners, junior board members, all with their own stories of coercion and abuse. A movement was born, and Elena didn't hide. She didn't seek a spotlight, either, but she stood by her words. She went to the courthouse. She testified. She faced down her father when he tried to call her back into the family business with offers of silence and luxury. You raised me to believe my voice didn't matter, she told him. Now you'll learn what it sounds like. He didn't speak to her again. But the world did. People wrote letters, sent flowers, some sent stories, survivors of things she would never know, but somehow helped shine a light on. The cabin became more than a refuge. It became a place of healing. And every day, she woke up just a little stronger. She still had nightmares, but now she had mornings. Too, the fire had burned bright. But even now, in the wake of justice, the smoke hadn't cleared. Elena stood at the edge of the cabin porch, the morning sun streaking across her face. She wasn't watching the trees. She was watching her past unravel on the tiny screen of Natalie's tablet. The media frenzy was still swirling. Breaking. Vail Enterprises CEO arrested in murder plot. Marquette heiress exposes billion-dollar abuse network. And yet, her face remained calm, not serene, never that, but composed. I walked up behind her with 2 mugs of coffee, offered her one. Any of it feel real yet? I asked. She took the mug, eyes still fixed on the headlines. No, it feels like I'm watching someone else's life burn. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the rustle of leaves and distant birdsong. They're calling me, the billionaire bride who brought down the beast, she said. Voice dry, like I'm a fairy tale or a symbol. You're not, I said. You're Elena, a woman who survived, then made sure no one else had to. She looked at me, and this time, she did smile. But peace, like all things, had a deadline. The letter came 3 days later, delivered not by post, but by a private courier in a tailored gray suit who stood at the edge of the woods like a ghost from her past. Ms. Marquette, he said, this is a formal summons. Your father is contesting your renunciation. He wants you back on the board. Elena didn't take the envelope. She didn't even blink. I walked away from all of it. He's arguing you can't walk away from blood. She looked at me. I stepped forward. She can. She did. The man gave a slight nod, handed me the envelope, and vanished. Inside, a lawsuit, filed by Lucien Marquette, demanding Elena's return to the family trust, freezing her federal witness stipend, reframing her actions as an emotional breakdown. They're trying to gaslight the world, Natalie said when we called her that evening. They want to own the narrative, Elena said. Again, I watched her hands shake, not with fear, but rage. Then we write a new one, I said. The next week became a war zone of strategy. Elena no longer hid. She wrote op-eds. She agreed to a single, powerful interview. She spoke not just about Adrian, but about the culture that enabled him, the boardroom games, the way wealth was weaponized against women like her. And people listened. More women came forward. Names once whispered were now screamed. Elena's name trended for days, not for scandal, but for strength. Still, the lawsuit loomed, until one afternoon, while I was chopping wood. She walked out holding a letter in one hand and a legal brief in the other. "I want to countersue," she said. "For what?" I asked. "For ownership. Not of the company, of the truth. I want everything they buried. Every silenced document, every paid settlement, every non-disclosure agreement." I stopped mid-swing. "That's a declaration of war." Her eyes flashed. "No, it's a declaration of freedom." The fight wasn't just legal. It was emotional, psychological, relentless. Her father's lawyers painted her as unstable, traumatized, manipulated by outsiders. They leaked photos, childhood tantrums, late-night parties from college, even emails where she begged her parents to stop the wedding. To them, vulnerability was ammunition. But Elena didn't break. She hosted a press conference, short, sharp, precise, no makeup, no glamour, just her voice. "They said I was too fragile to lead, too emotional to testify, too privileged to be believed. And yet I'm still here, standing, because silence is more dangerous than any scandal." A standing ovation followed, not from cameras, but from survivors standing at the courthouse steps. She met with senators behind closed doors, advocated for legislative changes to protect women in corporate power structures, refused hush money from the Marquette legal team. We came back to the cabin one night and found dozens of envelopes waiting. Letters, handwritten, from strangers who saw their stories in hers. One was from a woman named Isabel. "I was a secretary at one of Adrian's subsidiaries. I was told to stay quiet or lose everything. But you gave me courage. I filed my affidavit." Elena cried that night, for the first time since the cliff. Not because she was broken. Because she was finally healing. Some battles are fought in silence. Elena stood before the grand mahogany doors of the Marquette arbitration suite, flanked by two lawyers and Natalie, who had refused to stay in the background. The room beyond wasn't a courtroom. It was a negotiation chamber where billion-dollar settlements were decided with smiles and handshakes, and where stories were rewritten before they could be spoken. Her father sat at the end of a long, glossy table. Lucien Marquette, still sharp-suited, still composed, but older now, wearier. "Elena," he said, with the ease of a man who once believed money could fix anything. She didn't sit. "This isn't a family meeting. This is discovery. You've made quite a spectacle," he said coolly. "The board is not impressed." "I'm not here to impress the board. You're throwing away legacy, inheritance, everything we built for you." "No," she replied. "You built a prison. You called it a future. I'm here to burn it down." Her attorney slid a thick folder across the table. Full list of settlements paid to silence women connected to Marquette Holdings over the last decade. Unsealed, under subpoena. Lucien didn't blink, but his jaw tensed. "You really want to go to trial?" he said. "You want the press crawling through every email, every mistake you ever made?" Elena leaned forward. "Let them. I survived worse than headlines." He stared at her. For the first time, his voice faltered. "You were supposed to be like me." She straightened. "I'm proud I'm not." Outside, reporters swarmed, microphones angled like weapons. "Ms. Marquette, is it true you're demanding control of the board minutes? Is it true you're subpoenaing your father?" She raised a hand, voice firm. "I am not here to destroy Marquette Holdings. I'm here to dismantle the silence that allowed it to become dangerous. No more secrets, no more shame." Then she walked past them all, head high, shoulders square, a woman unafraid to be seen. Weeks passed, and the pressure mounted. Elena's countersuit sparked national debate. Financial networks ran hour-long specials on corporate whistleblowing. Women from other elite families came forward. One accused a partner of Adrian's of blackmail. Another revealed an illegal surveillance program used against dissenters. The government opened investigations. Lucien tried to settle, but Elena refused. "They want to hand me a check and call it justice," she said one night, sitting on the cabin porch, staring at the moon. But money won't fix what silence broke. What will? I asked. Accountability. And after that? She paused. Maybe peace. But I'll believe it when I feel it. It happened sooner than we thought. One crisp autumn morning, we received an envelope by courier. No lawyers, no threats, just a single-page letter. Lucien Marquette, citing health and public pressure, stepped down from his position. He released a public apology. For the first time in decades. The Marquette name stood without him. And Elena, she didn't celebrate, she didn't post, she walked into the forest alone and cried, not from grief, but from release. The case continued. Others still needed their day in court. But the tide had turned. Later that month, at a public town hall on corporate reform, Elena took the stage. She wore no designer label, no jewelry, just a white blouse and the same boots she wore the night she almost died. I was raised to believe wealth protected us. But the truth is, wealth often hides us, from accountability, from empathy, from truth. No more. Thunderous applause followed. That night, we sat under the stars, the fire crackling low. You still think about the cliff? I asked. Every day, she said, but now, I think about what came after. What came after? She looked at me, eyes warm. You. And with that, she leaned in, not to forget the past, but to choose the future. In the weeks that followed, Elena became more than a symbol. She became a catalyst. Universities asked her to speak. Policy panels invited her to join. She declined most. I don't want to become someone else's headline again, she said, but I'll keep fighting, just not on their terms. Instead, she launched a foundation. It started small, a single staff member, one lawyer, one therapist, one mission, to protect and amplify the voices of women trapped inside systems of power that fed on silence. She called it the Threshold Project. Natalie served on the board. So did two former whistleblowers who had testified against Adrian. Within months, the project was representing over a dozen cases across 5 states. Still, Elena remained at the cabin. She split her days between advocacy calls and chopping wood, writing proposals and tending the garden. She said the rhythm kept her balanced. That peace wasn't stillness, but motion with purpose. Sometimes, we'd ride horses along the ridge. She never went near the cliff again, not at first. Until one day, she did. She asked me to come with her. When we got there, she stood at the edge. Not close enough to fall, but close enough to remember. I thought I died here, she said, but something else died instead. The version of me that believed I owed him anything. She dropped something into the wind. A piece of ribbon, pale blue, once part of her wedding dress. I don't need this story to end with a ceremony or revenge. She whispered, I just need it to be mine. And for the first time since the fall, she smiled with her whole face. And from those ashes, something new was rising. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is realizing the world keeps turning without asking if you're ready. Autumn had surrendered to winter. The forest around the cabin transformed from gold to silver, and snow layered the trails where Elena and I used to walk side by side. But inside the cabin, the fire stayed lit, and so did something else, purpose. The Threshold Project had taken off faster than any of us imagined. Calls came daily, emails, to survivors, whistleblowers, advocates. They didn't want charity, they wanted change. And Elena, she answered every one. I can't fix everyone, she told me one evening, curled under a blanket by the hearth. But I can listen, and that's more than most ever get. Her phone buzzed. Another name, another request, another story waiting to be heard. She looked at it, then silenced the screen and leaned into my shoulder. Tomorrow, she whispered. For once, tomorrow could wait. It was Natalie who brought the next turning point. She arrived in a jeep packed with files, court transcripts, and a tired smile. I got you something, she said, handing Elena a manila folder. Inside, documents granting Elena full legal authority over the Marquette Foundation's unused social equity trust, a dormant fund created for PR purposes. Never actually spent. It's yours now, Natalie said. $50 million. No strings attached. You can use it for the project. Elena stared at the pages for a long moment. I thought he froze everything. He did, but he forgot to tell his lawyers where to find the third vault. This wasn't in the main holdings. It was created in your name during the merger agreement with Vale Enterprises. It was buried. Elena looked at her with something like awe. You dug it out? Natalie grinned. I'm an investigative journalist. It's what I do. That night, Elena sat at the table and began drafting the next phase. We're not just going to protect voices anymore, she said. We're going to amplify them. Fund legal defense, public campaigns, independent media, whistleblower protection. This isn't just a project now. It's a movement. And I watched her transform again, from survivor to builder. Not of corporations, but of something truer, of legacy. The snow didn't stop falling for days, blanketing everything in silence. But inside the cabin, the air was alive with purpose, with plans. Elena worked from dawn to dusk, emails, video calls, grant writing, public strategy sessions. The woman who once clung to a branch at the edge of death now commanded networks of support with a voice as sharp as winter air and twice as clear. She didn't seek headlines anymore, but they came anyway. Marquette heiress rebuilds with power. Not revenge, from target to trailblazer, Elena's threshold. The foundation went national, then global. Legal aid groups partnered. Survivors were flown to safe houses. Investigations launched. Legislation drafted. And Elena never wavered. You know, she said one morning as we stood on the back porch. They called me a liability when I left. Now they call me a leader. Titles change, I said, but truth doesn't. She looked out at the hills. Do you think I'll ever stop feeling like I'm still running? I shook my head. Maybe you're not supposed to. Maybe some of us survive so we can carry the torch further. Months passed. The project moved into a repurposed estate outside of Denver. A former tech startup campus turned into a sanctuary. Elena commuted twice a week but always returned to the cabin. It remained her home, her heartbeat. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings, she came back with Lily, the little girl from one of their first protection cases. A 7-year-old firecracker with too much silence behind her eyes and too much spark to be ignored. She doesn't have anyone, Elena told me, kneeling by the fire, and she doesn't trust institutions. I didn't either. I didn't need her to say more. 3 months later, we adopted her. Lily became ours, not by blood, but by bond. She reminded us what joy sounded like. And we remembered what healing looked like. Years passed, quietly, powerfully. Elena turned 35 on a spring morning soaked in sunlight. The three of us rode out to the rebuilt overlook, once a cliff of trauma. Now a garden sanctuary blooming with lavender and cedar. She wore no makeup, no diamonds, just jeans and a white linen shirt. Can you believe it? She whispered, taking in the valley. I wrapped an arm around her shoulder. Lily climbed into her lap. I believe in you, I said, always have. Elena turned to me then. And for the first time, she didn't look like someone running from the past. She looked like someone who had outrun it, who had built a new world in its wake. That night, as the sun dipped behind the trees and the stars poured into the sky, we sat on the porch together, quiet, complete. No more courts, no more cliff edges, just family. And in that stillness, Elena whispered the final words of her story. I was never the story they told. I was the one who rewrote it. Do you love Elena's journey? If this story moved you, gave you hope, or reminded you that even the deepest scars can lead to the brightest rebirth, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. Share this episode with someone who needs strength today. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful, soul-stirring stories like this one. This is just one voice. But together, we amplify truth. See you again.